So hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Accelerate your tech startup with the Startup Network and Baseline. I'm Ryan Burns. I'm head of community here for the Startup Network, and we're really excited to have you with us. At the Startup Network, we're dedicated to fostering innovation, collaboration, and growth within Australia's startup ecosystem. Whether you're just starting or looking to scale your tech venture, our events are designed to provide valuable insights, practical skills, and networking opportunities. And a big thank you to Baseline for partnering with us on this event and providing their expertise. Today, we're focusing on how to fast forward your tech startup's journey with a special emphasis on launching, scaling, and unlocking incredible incentives worth over $15,000. This webinar is perfect for both non-technical and technical founders looking to kind of build a scalable and cost-effective tech product. Agenda today, we're going to start with some challenges with launching tech products. That'll last about 30 minutes. We'll hear from Zurab Chima. He's a successful startup entrepreneur and a partner at Davika Ventures. That'll be about the challenges faced when launching tech products. And he'll share some insights on how technology impacts your bottom line and maybe some strategies to minimize tech costs. The second part is a workshop to deploy Baseline, plus to activate some offers. So Thomas Nixon, technical co-founder at Baseline, will guide us through setting up your AWS account, deploying Baseline, activating various startup offers. And this hands-on session will equip you with the tools to start building new features and optimizing your tech stack. Eligible startups, we can talk about that a little bit, but basically you can unlock benefits like 10 grand in AWS credits, waive Stripe processing fees on your first 10 grand in revenue, and even a free deployment of Baseline valued at 2 grand. These incentives are designed to give your startup a significant boost, helping you navigate the early stages with ease and efficiency. Throughout the session, I'll be moderating the chat, so please feel free to ask questions. We'll address all of your queries during the Q&A segment at the end. And this is a fantastic opportunity to gain, expert guidance, practical skills, and valuable resources to accelerate your startup's growth. Sounds exciting. So let's get started and explore the exciting possibilities ahead. Before I get started, I just wanted to, again, thank our friends at Baseline. And if you want to attend any other events of ours at the Startup Network, we have plenty more coming up this week. We have the webinar tomorrow as well as Friday, an in-person Founder Connect networking session on Tuesday, and a plethora of more stuff throughout the month. We're going to probably do around 130 events this year. So yeah, join us along the way. And if you have any questions for us, please let me know. I'll go ahead and put the information for the events and Startup Network memberships in the chat, but feel free. This is an interactive session. Put all your questions into the chat and we'll get to them at the Q&A. Tom, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. I'm Thomas, the technical co-founder of Baseline, and today we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what it's like to get your startup started with the tech solutions and what Baseline can do around that and how we can get Baseline set up. So pretty excited about it. We'll start with the challenges of, the challenges of getting a startup going. So once you have an idea and you know you want to build an app, doesn't mean that you can just turn around and have it built. There's a lot of things that go into building that process and a lot of the technologies that need to come together for that. And over the years, there's been lots of different technologies and they don't always mesh together in a really nice way. And they don't always take full control of the cloud and all the benefits that you can get from that. Z has been one of those people who have gone through that journey. And if he's ready, he can jump on and explain his experience.
Sure. Okay, I'll just share a short presentation and yeah, so I'll give you guys a bit of an introduction as well in a moment. I'll just bring up my slides. Yep. Cool. Okay, okay, so my screen's now up. So yeah, the agenda I think Tom might have already touched on. So this will be a run through both on the business side of what the impact of Baseline is and how we can make a difference to your business, and speaking about my experience that I've had as well. And then the second part of this would be obviously Tom walking through the technical aspect and how you can access the credits as well from your perspective. So a bit about my background. I started out.
You're just sharing the wrong screen.
Sorry. Okay.
You're sharing the wrong screen. We just can't see your slides.
No worries. I'll just fix that now. Is that working now?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, sounds good. So as I mentioned, a bit about my background. I've been in transportation technology, so building out transport solutions over the last 10 years or more than 10 years. And through that journey, we have had interactions with technology teams, both onshore and offshore. And within that, there's been a lot of learnings, especially with our hosting costs. So starting out, we were with on-premise services. So it meant our bills for hosting were fairly high. And the process of launching new features was very costly because it took much longer than what we anticipated. Over the years, we transitioned to cloud, and with that experience was Baseline. Baseline was obviously born out of an agency in Australia. So Wollongong was the agency was based there, Devika, and they obviously were using Baseline for all of their technology products. And as we transitioned, I had a bit of more of an insight into what that meant as a founder. So a couple of the points that I gathered was that you would then be able to better understand what your technology stack was. And part of that journey, you then are able to then actually address the questions that are most needed. So what is the framework that your application is built on? What are your hosting costs? What will maintenance look like? So the cost that sometimes as a founder or the operations as a founder, we do not pay attention to as much, especially from a non-technical origin. And so transitioning over the years, I was then able to get involved with companies that were built upon Baseline. And that was my role at Devika Ventures. So investing into companies and platforms that were built on that allowed us to have more reliability. And finally, Baseline then went open source a few months ago in May this year. And what that allowed is that kind of opened up the doors for many founders and companies, not just in Australia, but around the world, to access and experience the platform and the technology for themselves. Taking a step back, what exactly is Baseline? So as you can see, it's a serverless framework for building cloud native applications. So it's meant to be your one-stop shop when building an application. And the best way of explaining it, it's a layer within or beneath the application, the ground layer, which has all the key components from hosting to the testing environments to all the little bits and pieces that you would need, the databases as well, to kickstart and start building. So it takes the guesswork out of your technical expertise or person having to do their own research and finding out what are the best practices in the industry. So this will definitely answer those pieces of critical information that you will need to make as a founder when you're starting out with the project. So Baseline has been proven and tested and trialed in the market over a number of years. Looking at the more recent statistics, we've definitely surpassed these numbers as well. So it's been deployed over 200 times, over 500,000 concurrent users that we've had. We've had influencers and different industry leading companies launch, and they've experienced high growth and high rates and volumes of download. So we managed to show that it can sustain it. This framework is durable and reliable and expandable to sustain that volume. And the numbers speak for themselves. Over $500,000 worth of transactions that have occurred through Baseline, and we definitely have over 15 million end users that have touched a Baseline application, with all the number of applications that are out there that are built upon this framework. So what exactly is the problem that we're addressing? So it's really touching on the barriers for cloud native applications. When you're developing an application, there are probably three key angles that this does address. The first is your staffing and hosting costs, which is probably the obvious one. you typically need a person with experience that can make all those different decisions for you. This takes that guesswork out and that research period out of the equation. You're saving time because they're not having to, look at what are the best practices in database, what are the best practices in this angle. This kind of gives you all the necessary pieces from day one. And there are a lot of choices in the market, and that's where the complexity comes into play as well. There are constant updates, introductions of new features and new solutions out in the market. And as a founder or as a business decision maker, it can be very overwhelming to make the right selections of what to go with. There's the obvious risk. So as you spend more and more time on researching, you're taking time away from your business, but you're also not able to guarantee that what you have is front and center of what the market or where the market is going overall. So as you might be using certain solutions, it might become outdated over a number of years as well. And competition will use that time to obviously advance themselves. Where does Baseline then come into play in addressing those problems? We've touched on this already, but as I said, cloud native, that's probably the buzzword for us, and it's a robust tech stack. So it can scale to large proportions, to very high volumes, and this is what allows it to grow so well. It can de-risk your investment. So we look at what our solution does from an investor ready angle, most importantly. So where does this take you? So because as a founder, you're able to then make those critical decisions for your business's day-to-day operation, that can help you then alleviate time of making those technical decisions, which you as a founder may not need to make now. So having that in place really does speed up the process to market. So unpacking a bit about the components that we've touched on a few times through this presentation. So these are the components, and without reading off the screen, the ones that kind of really come out is the planning and setup, which is that initial phase. That is some time that a developer needs to spend and experience on for them to even get started in deploying your initial environments. The fact that Baseline gives you that out of the box is already saving you time. And if we just kind of move to security and permissions, it's using industry-leading practices. We obviously tapping into AWS, so you can understand the scale and the measures they have in place to address concerns, and also the measures of scaling your business as you go along. And then on the sort of final aspect is the finalization and deployment. The environments that you get between testing and production are all given to you, allow you to make changes very much more seamlessly and build without having to, you can focus more on the feature side without having to focus on the basics that should already be given out of the box for you. So Baseline, in effect, will speed that journey up. We've seen, and this is obviously a research over a number of different projects, by about 12 weeks. So moving on, again, one of the points was around maintenance, reducing that infrastructure bill. There's that direct implication of reducing infrastructure and hosting bill, but there's also the indirect costs that may not be directly attributed or associated. It's the maintenance that comes with it. So when you're able to have a more stabilized environment, there's less and less maintenance that is required from your standpoint, or from your technical team standpoint. If you're looking at this example, and this is a like-for-like comparison with a company as it scales and grows, you can see the staffing cost dramatically reduces as you move on. And one of the questions that we've had in the past is, well, am I required to have 3 staff from day one, similar to those without Baseline? And the reality is, well, no, because this is looking at an example of a fast growth, high growth company. You may not need to have this many resources, but an apple for an apple sort of comparison would show you that overall through your journey over a 4-year cycle, the saving is considerable, and we've tried to make it as accurate as possible. The obvious one is in year 3, which you can see your hosting costs drop. And if I'm comparing it to some of the experience that I've had with other hosting providers, there's probably 2 examples to note. One is that on-premise, we obviously know has an added cost. To some it can suit, but to startups it's not suitable and it's not needed. And that thousands and thousands of dollars of bills that can add up on a month-to-month basis can make it less and less likely for you to then, it's taking cash flow out of your business essentially. And the second point is, there are cloud solutions out there, and serverless is something that is obviously taking off quite well. So being on that sort of bandwagon is very important, and also knowing that you're set up in a way, in an environment that your costs can be reduced down. So just simply moving and adopting cloud it's probably the obvious thing, but it's not the only thing. With Baseline, you're able to then make it much more efficient. So you're able to then see those real savings of time and money. In a nutshell, so as a non-technical founder, what's the summary? What's the takeaway? So we've equated that $250,000 worth of tech, and we'll look at examples of how you can actually translate that into real world savings in a moment with companies that have actually experienced this. But yeah, that's the value that we've seen with all the different plugins and solutions and parts of Baseline that you get from day one given to you. And again, the decisions that's made for you as well. And that's where some of the value resides. Engaging a technical expert to research and find out best practices and different components is costly, and it's adding an extra layer of expense to your business. So this can remove that cost largely for you. And de-risk investment, you're using solutions that have been tried and tested and scaled in the market that other companies have used as well. So you're not reinventing the wheel, you're adopting something that you can see, touch, and feel with other companies having experienced it. So you can actually access a Baseline app and experience it for yourself. I like to sort of keep the testimonials at the end, and that's why we've got them here. So from our perspective, we've seen great successes, and these are just some of the success stories that we've had. With GoTo, this was a business that had a different technical team, and deploying features was a very tedious process. They weren't able to get their product out to market initially with a different approach. With Baseline, you can see that streamlined down to 3 months of development. So what it meant is that a year worth of work that they were trying to experiment and get out to market was then condensed into 3 months with this approach instead. So getting the MVP out there meant that they could test, get feedback, and then obviously make the business decisions that need to be made. And that's where your saving really lies upon, that largely goes unnoticed by many business owners. Jade with Equilution and Big Appetite, that's in the fitness and nutrition space. I should mention GoTo was in the recruitment space. So with the fitness and nutrition space, with Equilution and Big Appetite, the cost was probably the predominant factor, the hosting costs. So making that a saving was something that they realized very quickly. And on the concurrent users that I touched on a few slides back, this is a very good example with Jade, that they saw a massive saving because they had spikes of download. Being an influencer and having their platforms out there, they would see spikes of downloads with new feature releases or new programs that they were releasing. And the fact that Baseline could handle the user base and the level of activity was a testament to the product. Finally, Z Recruitment or Z Recruitment. The technology obviously showed them the value in having less people and less hands on deck. So that maintenance level saving that they were able to experience allowed them to see that there were less resources and less people required to sustain and maintain their product. So their saving was not just in their hosting costs or speed to market, which we saw in the first 2 examples, but thirdly, the actual saving of people and resources that they had to engage in maintaining and sustaining the platform as it grew. And they've seen some great numbers and great transaction volume run through the platform, again proving that the technology is scalable as well, which is very important when you're building a product on day one, to not just get a product out there quickly, but essentially get a product out there that can actually scale as well. So you don't have to be going back in time and redoing the framework or what solutions you've used to build your platform on as you've grown and scaled. It can become a bit of a headache, and we've seen the different companies have experienced that on their end. Well, before I hand it over to Tom, if there's any questions that we can address, or any points, yeah, feel free to sort of drop those down. Okay, I can see there are a few comments. I just looked through the comments. I can see there's a few comments there. So as we go through, so please at any point add those comments through the chat option, and we'll do our best to respond either on the session or afterwards. Thomas, did you want to take over with your session?
Yeah. So we're going to move on to the workshop part. Now, I'm aware not everyone has an AWS and GitHub account, so I'm just going to post the links in the channel, and we're going to need both of these for this. So I'll give it 5 minutes to get everyone set up. And if you guys can just give me a thumbs up or emoji of some sort in the chat to let me know if you got your AWS and GitHub account open, that would be fantastic. These are both free accounts. And while you'll set that up, I'll start the presentation. That way we can just move along a bit. So what is Baseline at a technical high level? Well, it's a full stack framework, so it comes with everything out of the box ready to go. The way I like to describe it is it's like you've had a whole engineering team with all the skill sets required to build a cloud native app. And they've come in, sat down, written the whole app essentially for the core of what the app is, so that you can then just focus on building what's unique about the product. So as part of that, we give you all of the source code of Baseline. So there's no black boxes or parts of the code base that we own, or we have no access to your AWS account. This is all hosted in your own AWS account, so you have complete control of it, and you can change it however you like. And since it's built for the cloud, it means we can take advantage of all the benefits of the cloud. Sometimes if you take a older stack and try to force it into the cloud, you may have to rework the stack a lot or have to pay significant amounts to scale it in the cloud. Having something out of the box means that we can really take advantage of the cost and scalability. It's also using TypeScript. So this is a language that the code's written in, and it's used in the front end and the back end. And this lets us have developers that can work on both sides of that fence, rather than, say, having a back end in Python and the front end in TypeScript and having a bit of trouble with hiring more people just to get yourself off the ground. We wanted to also lean into the largest hiring network in the world, which is TypeScript developers, as well as the technologies that they're based on too, React and Express, so that a lot of that knowledge that's already out there can be reused, except in a cloud native environment. We're also using infrastructure as code. Now, this lets us essentially make copies of the app, in the sense that you'll have a staging and production environment. So staging is for before you ship features out to production, you might want to test it in a very similar environment to production, as well as production. So having those two environments is very helpful. And yep, all hosted in your own AWS account, complete control, add whatever you like. AWS is made up of over 300 services, so you can still take advantage of all of that technology from there. So what exactly is in there when you get Baseline? So we have the API, which is where we get all our data, do our business logic and things like that. We also have a React website, which can be a marketing website, or you can change it to a user portal. The admin portal as well for managing the app. It's very easy to forget that most apps, even mobile apps, require an admin portal to manage them a bit. We also include the CI/CD, so how we get the code to the staging environment in production, so linking your code to actually being deployed in your AWS account. Developer tooling to make developers' lives a bit easier, having it all hooked into Baseline already. Authentication, so user management, so signing up, signing in, create account, forgot password, all that stuff, as well as middleware that helps the developers use it straight away. We also have it set up to run locally, so developers can have a very similar experience to it being deployed. That way you can iterate a lot quicker and develop features, because it's all running locally. You can see how they change the features. You can see if there's errors, and you can have a much better way of testing. And most of it is hot reloaded. So as the developers make changes, they can see those changes. We also have environment variables. These are like the secrets of the platform. So if you have things like Stripe payments, you'll have these secret keys and access keys. We don't want to share those everywhere. So we don't want developers copying around a .m file, which essentially can be a security vulnerability. So we've managed environment variables in your AWS account as well for all the different environments. So what makes Baseline help you build faster? Well, we went back and looked at everything a developer does in the life cycle of a project, and they have a lot of different parts they work with. And we wanted to address that in Baseline and have this end-to-end framework where developers can have an answer to how they're working in each environment. So they'll be building code on their local machine, they'll be running an editor, they'll be debugging, they'll be essentially interacting with the app as well, and pushing that code into their repository of code as well, which will likely sit outside their system, and they'll manage things like branches there. Then you have your AWS account, which is where the apps are running. So you'll probably manage things like monitoring the logs and deploying the code to the AWS account, as well as any interaction you need with your AWS stuff. So throughout that whole process, you have things like, how do we make a change? How do we do a bug fix? How do we push it to production? And we've answered all of those things so that from day one, you have these processes and practices that really enable the developers to move quickly and then have it at an optimized and performance-based solution for the cloud already ready to go. So rather than trying to figure out how all these different technologies work together, you have an example where out of the box, it's all working straight away. You can poke and prod it to learn, and you can learn backwards from something that already works. So what can you build with Baseline? Well, we've just about built everything. Web applications, mobile applications, B2B, marketplaces, headless CMSs. It's all very straight. All these things have the same core technology for the developers working in the cloud. And this has been really effective for us to have a grounding position before we build any app. And you can still take advantage of all that and start working on what's unique about your product from day one, rather than focusing on standing up all the technology. So Baseline's a tech stack, and essentially that's everything that has to run or be used in your app. And it's an opinionated stack. So we've picked these technologies specifically. You can still change any of them if you like, because when you get Baseline, you get all of the source code. And we've optimized it for speed, as well as stability, as well as being able to develop very quickly, as well as using a number of AWS services that are serverless, and fitting those things together so that they are cost effective and scalable. So what is serverless? Essentially, the dream of serverless is that you don't have to worry about as many things, and your app will automatically scale, and it'll be that much more efficient to get features into production. So we've really leaned into this with Baseline, so much so that we've had fantastic results with how quickly you can deploy the code, how much it costs, and being able to really focus on what's unique about your business. So one example is we have a whole SaaS-based system for Baseline that gets about 60,000 hits a month, and it costs us 53 cents a month to run because we're doing it as a cloud-native solution. We've really optimized for that. So there's a lot of benefit in being able to host a whole SaaS for 53 cents because, well, that's the admin portal, client portal, marketing site, integrations. It includes the production and staging. So it's fairly significant amount of functionality for a very cheap cost, and that will keep scaling as well. So we're up to the part where we can all do this together now. Has everyone got their GitHub and AWS set up? Excellent. All right, well, let's kick this off. So Now, before we start this, if you have a technical person that you'd like to talk to me about at some other point, feel free to book something in my Calendly to talk about Baseline. And if you'd like them to see this as well, I'm more than happy to chat with them or get them to stand up Baseline at another time. So that Calendly link there, I'll drop it in the chat as well. All right, so the first thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is please give Baseline a star. I know, shameless plug here, but I would really love one. Just up in the top right-hand corner of that page I just posted, if you could just give me a star, it would mean a lot for Baseline and other people being able to find Baseline and benefit from it as well. So what we're going to be doing today is setting up Baseline using GitHub Codespaces and your AWS account. So Codespaces is essentially what a developer would use to develop an app. They would normally potentially have this on their computer as well. And then we're going to ship it into AWS. So we're going to connect the two. And by the end, we'll have a working application in the cloud. So I'll try and pace myself and let me know if anyone falls behind, and we'll remedy that. So to get to Codespaces from your GitHub account, up in the top left-hand corner, you've got that drop down and we have Codespaces just here. So if we click on that, I'm really hoping people have dual screens. And so now what we've got here to Codespaces, we'll be using the blank Codespace. So there'll be a use this template button. And we'll just click on that. And what this will do is it'll open up a new Codespace. This will take 30 seconds sometimes, depending on how many people are trying to do this at once. And excellent. Let me just make that a bit bigger for everyone. Okay. Thumbs up if Codespaces is loaded. I'll give it a minute. All right. So what we're going to do once that's loaded up is we have this command here on baselinejs.com. I'll post the command in the chat. What we're going to do is actually run that, and that will create the brand new Baseline app for us. Now, the app's going to be called My App, if you like, or you can change it to something else. It's just that last bit of the command. So if we go to this terminal part, we can paste that in, and it will probably ask you to allow pasting. I would allow it because that'll make life much easier. And we'll have that there. So I'm going to put in, I'm going to change it to my demo because I've used my app a few too many times now. And hit enter. Now you'll see it do a bunch of things. And we'll say, yes, we do want to proceed. And now it's just getting the code from NPM. All right. So this has given us a new folder essentially over here on the left. So we can see it's created all those files. And what we can do now is we have to open this folder. I don't know why this is a thing, but what we have to do is go to the hamburger menu up in the top left, file, and then open folder. And you'll see a few different selections here, but we want to select the Codespaces blank, the very bottom one, and then my demo, and then OK. And that will essentially reload the page. All it does is put the project in the right spot in Codespaces. So that will just take a second to open up. All right. So, and we can see here we've got a README on the left. So we can open that README up and we can scroll down a little and we've got the setup instructions here. I'm just going to look at it in preview because it will look a bit better. And we can actually follow along with these setup instructions now. So what we'll do is we'll run the install requirements, copy paste that and hit enter. Now this essentially sets up the development environment to have all the software it needs. It's just a much easier way than doing it individually for the 5 different pieces of software that we need to use. It also sets the right versions, which is very handy for it consistently working.
chocolate එක විතර double chocolate එකට මේක
So now that that's done, we can actually then use the npx thing. Sorry, we've already done that. The pnpm install. So we'll just run that. And this installs all the dependencies from npm. Then it basically just gets us ready to work with baseline. I'll give that a minute because sometimes it can take a little bit longer for everyone. Now, once that's finished, we can use pnpm run setup. And basically, this just says what the name of the app will be in your AWS account. We'll use the same one as what we used before. And it also lets us pick the region that baseline will run in. So I'm going to call it my demo again. Just hit enter once you've typed it in. And then we've got a whole list of things that look very confusing and important, but we're just going to deploy it to the Australian region, AP Southeast 2, number 18. So we just type 18, and this just means where the most local part of the app is. So 18, and we're done. So now that we've done this, we can create the repository. So this is where all your code's going to live, and this is where developers would clone it from and modify it and push changes back to. So the way we do that in Codespaces makes it much, much easier. And we go over here to the left with the source control button. It's basically 3 little dots. And we click publish to GitHub. Now we want to have a private repository for this, so we'll just select that one. And that's created it. So when it's finished, you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner that you've got open on GitHub. We're going to want to open that up. Now, this is going to try and deploy into our AWS account, but the thing is, it doesn't know where to deploy that to yet. So that's fine. So you'll probably get an email saying it didn't work, but that's expected. And what we're going to do now is actually connect the AWS account and the baseline account together. So if we go to, find this link. I'll just post this in the chat. There's two details that we need in here. It's going to be the provider. So I'll post this in the chat just so it's easy to access for everyone, as well as the audience. And I'll show you what we'll do with those. If we jump into our AWS account now, so it'll look something like this. We will be going to IAM. If you can't see IAM here, just type IAM up the top, and you can click on it from here. Now, there's something called identity providers. And we're going to want to add a new identity provider. So if we click on add provider, you'll see there's two options here, SAML and OpenID Connect. We're going to be using OpenID Connect, and that's where these two values will now go. So we've got that, that first one, the provider, and then the audience as well. And that's that second one, and they're both in the chat. So if you paste those in there, we can then click add provider. Mine's going to give me a nice error because mine already exists, but you can just click add provider. Yep. And essentially you'll be back here. Now, what we need to do is add a role. So now that we're back at the identity providers, we'll click on the tokens.actions GitHub content. And up in the top right, we have assign role. This essentially helps us determine exactly the permissions that we'll have in AWS. So we'll click assign role and we'll create a new role. Now this will be a web identity again. And we have these drop downs down the bottom here. So what the identity provider will want to use the tokens actions GitHub. And then the audience is, we can just drop that down and select it. Now GitHub organization. This one is actually hiding in that code base we just created, the repository, where we open it up from here. We'll see here, and up the top, you'll have a URL. It'll be github.com. And the first part is the organization. So this bit here. So that's the organization. And then the next part will be the repo. So we'll copy this bit. And we'll just paste that in. And then the repository, which will be that last bit of the URL. So my demo. I'll paste that in there. So just from here, organization and repository. Okay, now we can click next. All right, so this is where we can pick existing permissions. You should always use restricted permissions, but for the demo and for connecting this up to the pipeline, we're going to be using the administrator access. Make sure it's only administrator access, that first one. There's some that can look like the same thing if this cuts it off. So just make sure it's administrator access specifically. And then we can scroll down and next. Now we're going to give it a role name. So up the top, there's the role name, and we'll call it something like deploy. You guys can call it deploy. I can't because I already have one. So I'll just call it deploy baseline. And we can go down after doing that and click create role. Excellent. So that's created it now. Now you'll see that you'll have a list here under the roles. And what we need to do is there's a value we need to copy. So what we'll do is, if you can find yours, it should be somewhere on the first page. If not, you can have a quick search for it, for that name you just used. Mine's right here. I'll click on it. And up the top here, we have an ARN. And ARN is basically just a name of a resource in your AWS account. So it's like an identifier that tells us what it is. So we need to put this into our code base. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy it. Just click the little copy button. And we'll go back to code spaces now. Now, you can't see those files in the code anymore because we need to go click back on the Explorer. So up in the top left, you got the two file icon. So we'll just click on that and we'll see all the code for the repository again. So what we want to do is we're going to click into the GitHub folder So .github, and you'll see these two files. Now, these are essentially, they describe what happens when we deploy code or had the code checked. So what we need to do is give this code permission to run essentially. So if we click on deploy, you'll see down on line, I think it's 42. Yep. We have this echo role ARN. And what we need to do is put the new ARN in there. So if we select just that bit there and paste, and we'll keep that double quotation mark and everything. And then we'll do it for the one below it as well. And paste that in. That will save that there. Okay. So just click, I'm going to do file save just so everyone can see. Otherwise, you can use the shortcut for whatever type of computer you're on. And now we're going to also do the same thing for the build lint folder file as well. So if we just click in there, I think it's also in a similar spot, line 44. We're just going to replace that with that one we copied. All right, and file save again. Now that we've made the code change, we need to get that code change into our repo. So how we do that is on the left, we'll go back to that source control, the 3 dots, and we'll click on that. And what you should see is you'll see both those files. And if you click on them, you'll see that it's highlighting the difference between how it was and how it is now. And we can see those two changes there. And what we need to do is stage those changes. So at the top here, you'll see where it says changes, there's a little plus symbol, and we'll just click that, and that will stage both files. And this is how we know exactly what we're going to be putting into our repo. And we're going to give it a message of what the change is. So you can name it, you can basically say anything in here. I'm just going to put in update deploy and click commit. And now that that's committed, we just have to push it to the repo. So I'll click sync changes and agree that that's okay. And that little one will go away. So that's now pushed that code into our repo. And what's happening now is it will be trying to deploy it into our AWS account. And we can actually watch this process. And that's what we're going to do to make sure that there's no issues. So if we click back to the repo, you'll see back here where we've got all the code, there's up the top here, something called actions. And this is essentially the CI/CD that's running. So if we click on actions, we've got a few things going on here. So there's those first ones that failed that we're expecting to fail. And now we've got the build and lint one and the deploy one. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the deploy one, update deploy, and you'll see something called setup. If not, just scroll down a little and it's probably got a little number ticking up there. That's how long it's been running for. So we'll just click on that. And we can see that it's running through. Now, if anyone has issues, let me know. You'll probably, if you have an issue, it will be roughly here, assume role. It will be stuck here. So this is going to take 8 minutes. So the pipeline for the first deploy is the longest one, which is about 8 minutes. After that, it's much, much faster. But this will essentially get your code into the repo. Is anyone having issues, or thumbs up if you're all good with the assume role? All right. I'm going to assume it's all good. And what we'll do now is create an IAM role. Now, this is going to let us do a few things like create a new user for the admin portal. And we'll be able to, while we wait for this, set that up. It's not too tricky. So if we just go back to the AWS account again, we've got on the left in IAM. If you're not in IAM, you can still again just go type in IAM and click here. And you'll see users on the left. And we'll just click on that. And what we'll do is we'll create a new user. And we can call this code spaces or something along those lines. Code spaces baseline, I'll just call it that. Doesn't really matter. And we'll click next. We are going to be attaching a policy directly to that user. So we're giving it permissions again. So we'll just click on that. And you'll see again, we've got these permission policies, and we're going to select administrator access again. Again, should use restricted as much as you can, but for this, we'll be using administrator. So we just click on that and scroll down and just next. So basically you get a summary here explaining what you're about to do, and we'll just click create user. And that's been created. So now that you'll be back at the list of users, and you should see the one that you just created. And if you click on that, we have some additional settings now. And what we'll go to is security credentials there on that tab menu. So if we just click on security credentials, scroll down, there's a title that's called access keys. This page is a bit confusing to look at, but yeah, we're looking for the access keys one, and we're going to create access key. Now, this access key, we're going to be using it in the CLI or the command line interface that we were working with in Codespaces. So it will just select the CLI one up the top, and it will just say, hey, do you understand the risks of doing this? And we'll say yes, and tick that box, and then just next. We do not need a tag, so we can just create the access key. Now, don't share this secret access key with anyone. It's something that's you should protect. Just don't share it. You can only see this once here. We're only going to want to see it once here. I recommend not sharing this ever, because it means someone could compromise your account. So what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this value here, the access key, and we'll go back to the Codespaces now. And what we can do is we can finish that setup process. So there's this PMPM run AWS profile, and that's what we're going to be using now. So PMPM run AWS profile. And then we're going to paste that access key in here and hit enter. Now the secret key, no matter how much you type, the cursor won't move, so it won't look like you've pasted for the next bit. Be very aware, paste it only once. So if we go back to that IAM user and we copy that secret access key, we can put that in with the secret key here, paste, oh God. And I am going to delete that very quickly. Again, don't share that with people. So that was, I think, because I'm doing a share screen that it showed it the values. And hit enter again. So if you did have an error, such as how I already disabled my access code, you will see that this error will come up. If it did work, however, it will say AWS keys worked. So that's all good. And what you can do then is, after that, run this command here, PMPM run add user staging. And this will let us set up a new user. What it will do is ask you for an email address. So just put in a email address that you're using and then a password, and there'll be a list of rules for those passwords. And you'll want to just make sure you put something in, even if it's it's a good one, baseline with a capital B1 exclamation mark, something along those lines, and it should create that user. Now, once you do that, I'll just wait for you guys to finish creating that user. And while we do that, I'll have a look at the pipeline, see how it's going. So it's still deploying, but it's not far off finishing. And so once you've created that user, what we can do is we can run pnpm run URLs. Now, I wonder if I have an existing code space with this, but essentially when you run that, it'll give you 3 different links, and there'll be a web page and a admin portal link, and we'll want to open those up. So let me just see if I've got one that's already. All right. So we have a look at what the command was again. There's pnpm run URL staging. Now, if your pipeline hasn't finished yet, this won't do much. So we need to wait and make sure that it's actually finished deploying. And you'll see that this process here will have ticks everywhere. And it will have finished the complete job, which mine's still getting to. Yep, so that's good. We can run that command now. And we'll see those URLs turn up. There we go. So we've got the web page, and we'll just you can command click on it, or I think control click in Windows and open. And you'll have a web page that's deployed. So this is running from your AWS account, all hosted in your own account. And then we'll also have the admin portal. So we can click on that as well and open that. And you'll have this button dashboard, and you'll be able to log in with that email and username you just created. Let's see. This still works for me. I'll just create one myself. And so when you log into that, that's another website that's hosted in your AWS account and gives you access to all the admin sort of functions. So you can sort of see how it's a skeleton for an app ready to be expanded upon, and all the core functionality is there working. Finish that. And this is what it would look like. So you got admin portal, you got a list of admins. There's only one admin. You got the account settings as well, sign out, edit. And it's essentially the very start of an app. So you've now got a code base for baseline, and you have it deploying into your AWS account, ready to go. And you can start adding what's unique about your product now. So you can have developers who know React or Express or AWS start working from that code base and being able to ship it and automatically deploy into your AWS account. So I think that's probably a good place to leave it. Does anyone have any questions? There's also a YouTube video for running setting this up also. I'll just paste the link as well once I find it. Probably gonna play an ad or something. Yep. Oh my, there's too many things going on. We'll follow that up later. But there's a channel on YouTube called Baseline JS. And we can hopefully get there. Here, and we'll just post that link in here.
We've got a question in the chat as well.
Oh, yeah. So what are the limitations or patterns that Baseline forces you to accept? So it'll be those technology solutions. So it's currently only on AWS, as well as only in TypeScript. So if you're thinking of using Python or Azure, Baseline's not really built for that. The technology mostly can be switched out if you're in the ecosystem of AWS already and you want to use something like Aurora or the Postgres database. You can totally switch that out in Baseline, as well as add any additional tooling that you might need. We often do things like add a React Native package as well. Since it's a mono repo, the code that's in Baseline can be shared pretty easily, and adding more TypeScript or Node applications is pretty easy. Yeah, so essentially the question is, what are the efficiency gains that come in subsequent years? So with software development, if you're slow off the mark at the start, it affects you for the whole journey of the project. So say it took me 45 minutes every time to deploy the app. That's quite a long pipeline. And it means that every time we go to ship a change or deal with a bug that's in production, you're likely going to be waiting for those 45 minutes. And the more you ship code, which I would recommend doing often, it's going to impact you and your processes. So saving time and being able to build features early is very important. Also, things just like having error codes in AWS show up in the right place with source maps is super important. So being able to debug and run the app locally and all these things that work seamlessly, you can spend a lot of time on those and they take away from your product. So I would probably say that in subsequent years, it helps a lot from putting more time back into your product from that get-go. But also we've been building apps that have lasted 5 years, and a lot of the decisions we made in Baseline help you sidestep those without even realizing it. So we've experienced things where a single Lambda, where we put all our functionality in the single Lambda for the API, ended up getting too big to be able to deploy anymore. And the account was just said no. So we had to come up with how to split it apart and things like that. Now that's all included in Baseline. We've also handled things like caching and the cost-effective solutions that will scale along with you. So you don't want to worry about having 100,000 users on your app when you get 100,000 users. You just want it to be handled. You don't want to have to re-platform or re-engineer it. So part of Baseline is also helping you sidestep those situations that do come up in those subsequent years. And it makes it very effective to have a team work on it. And these are the technologies we picked in AWS, long living services too. So we're pretty confident in the technology we've picked with them, being an AWS partner as well. You'll find a lot of efficiencies, and it's a lot more simpler. So instead of having a complex product potentially, Baseline makes it very easy to get started and work with, while still giving you the full flexibility to be able to change any parts as you do grow or as your team grows. As well as being a mono repo that's set up for a team to be able to build in, it becomes much easier to add more developers to a project, because you don't have to be like, oh, that manual thing I did to get this to work, I don't have to think about that. Your developers can just onboard straight away and start building. Anyone else? There's that YouTube link. I think it's called something GitHub Codespaces. You can actually follow along in that as well. So if you don't get back to this video, there's also a quicker, more direct one that might be easier to follow. Yeah.
All right, cool. Excellent. Well, thanks, Tom. I really appreciate that. And to everyone here at Baseline, that was a really fantastic session. I felt like we just went through a whirlwind, and I learned more in like an hour than I have in quite some time. So really cool job. However, if it was too quick, don't worry. We have recorded this, and so we'll be up on our YouTube channel in just a little bit. And we will also be working with our friends at Baseline on a variety of other topics and areas in the future, but really fantastic way to kind of show what we can do right off the bat with Baseline. So again, thanks so much. If there's any other questions that you might have, feel free to reach out to us here at the Startup Network, or you can reach out to Baseline directly. I'll be sending out an email afterwards to everyone. But again, have a very lovely day. We have some other events coming up this week, and please click on the link in the chat if you do have any other questions or want to attend some other events. But yeah, thanks, guys. Have a nice day.
So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.